everyone.
Hello, welcome to day 8 of the New York State Craft Brewers Conference. You are in the session Recruiting for Diversity. And we had a session yesterday that covered some overlapping information. Stephanie is really an expert in recruiting in general. So she'll do a deeper dive and get a little more technical than the session with Dr. J yesterday, but a nice compliment. So if you watch both the sessions, you're gonna know everything you need to know and more about recruiting and recruiting for diversity. So today we have Stephanie Vavonese with us. She's the owner of SMB Recruiting, has an offshoot division called Brew Recruit. Stephanie, you started Brew Recruit, what, like 2 years ago? How did that happen? You've been in recruiting for years. How did you make the segue into recruiting in the brewing industry?
Well, kind of interesting. So I started SMB Recruiting 4 years ago now, and I had started my entire career in recruiting back in 2006, and I was then only recruiting for accounting and finance professionals. And then did that for about 8 years in DC, and then decided to move home to Syracuse. Worked internally for a company, a government contractor, and just really missed the interaction with people. And so I left there to launch SMB Recruiting. And while I was starting off, I had a friend who decided she might have an interest in recruiting, and she had a food science background from Cornell. So she joined me to learn the business and decided to stay on. And her first summer, I said, who do you know? Who can we reach out to grow the business? It was a little slow. And so she put an email together, we reviewed it, and she sent it out to people she had worked with previously as a food scientist consultant. And one of the clients was Nick Matt. And Nick Matt, of all people, out of everyone she reached out to, responded, say, hey, we're actually looking for a master brewer. Can you work on that? So she came over to my desk and said, Steph, can we work on this? And I said, I have no idea what that position does, but yes. And so within a week, we went out and met with Nick. And in that week, we actually found Grady Hall, who ended up meeting with him the week after in Denver, because they were out there for a conference. So that really launched it. So we met with Nick, and as we were meeting with Nick, he also mentioned, as we were concluding our conversation, that they needed more of a controller / CFO because theirs was retiring. So we ended up working on that and filling that. And then from there, they got us in contact with Lord Hobo Brewery, and we helped them we worked on their master brewer position. And from there, we kind of started to develop a little niche, and really we love the industry. My uncle's in it. So you guys are fun people. And this was such a different environment than recruiting accountants and finance people, right? And then, this Lord Hobo ended up being a nationwide search, and you got involved and talked to so many people. And the biggest thing I think attracted me most to the beer industry, you guys are like willing to help. You're good people, right? Everyone was willing to give a name, help with a referral, raise their hand. And that was so refreshing. So
it's a lot easier for you.
Yeah, and it made it more fun and engaging. So from there, I decided to try to make it my niche. So kind of launched it from there.
And that first job of finding a brewer for Saranac, it sounds like that was a fairly quick process from start to finish. Is that typical that it takes a few weeks or, to hire somebody at that level?
It really depends. Lord Hobo, I know they're still looking. It depends, I think, on the size of the brewery, the culture, also what talent's available. And I think one of the biggest things while recruiting, in my mind, time kills deals. So I actively go out and search for people, and I would really encourage other people to do the same. Because when you go out and search for people, you don't have to wait for people to fill your funnel, right? Or your pipeline. And when I go out and call people, they're not expecting my call. So it's like they're more excited about it. I'm going there with a passion. I'm calling them with a purpose because their resume stood out to me. I mean, Grady Hall would never have thought he'd be moving to upstate New York, from Denver, Colorado, but he did. So, I think if you can generate interest and purpose and excitement, you can get things moving a lot faster than if you just post and pray.
Okay. So what does the current landscape of recruiting look like right now as we're transitioning into the new
It's
phase,
really,
the new of the pandemic?
yeah, it's been really interesting, right? Because as much as you would think people aren't hiring, companies are hiring. Unfortunately, I think a lot of smaller breweries have closed. So the landscape is going to be unique to this industry specifically because it's so different, so niche. But you would be surprised. I would say a lot of companies are hiring. Candidates are going off the market quickly and they're getting multiple offers. I would think that's more for the salaried positions. For the hourly positions where you're also kind of competing with unemployment, that's where I think my clients are struggling. That's obviously very specific to this time frame that we're living in right now. Who knows how much longer that's going to go on for. But the beer industry is pretty specific, and it's a fun environment, which is not like a lot of the other industries who are lacking people and struggling for it. So I do think, people are also getting bored sitting at home. People who you want on your team are the people who want to be working. So I would say this is kind of a great time to go out and try to find people and hire people, because I think you're going to have a larger pool of candidates than you might otherwise.
Okay. And then let's talk about diversity for a second here. How does that come into play? What does that mean, recruiting for diversity?
And I think, John and Paul and Ethan, love to get your thoughts on this and what's important to you. But, when you think of diversity, people, jump to the rate, thinking of race, but there's a lot more. Is it men, women you want? What age group? Maybe you're targeting younger. But I have to say, I really feel that people who are quick to shy away from someone in their late 50s, early 60s, you're really doing a disadvantage. Those are the people who want their last job in their career. And to them, it's not all about money. It's not all about the title. They want career, they want stability, and their purpose in jobs at that point has changed. And I've seen this consistently across all professions. People are later on in their career, they want to do something they can go to work and feel happy about, feel like they're helping the next generation, train, mentor, and really start to pass on that skill set. And I think, some people are like, oh, they have too many years of experience, they're going to be too expensive. It's not really, they actually have more time on their hands, right? Their kids have gotten older. They have more flexibility than you think. So I'd really encourage you to think outside the box there when you look at a resume. Diversity, also maybe even geographically in the United States. Where are you coming from? We have the difference in thoughts in the East Coast, West Coast, IPAs. To that little extent, that's the interesting stuff. So you got to think broader when you're thinking about diversity. And how do you go about getting a diverse pool of candidates, right? I think you got to take advantage of, like Dr. J said, your network, but also build, outlets to reach out to. So one of the biggest things I think is, working with universities. Another thing is people really are looking to get their foot in the door. So do you have an internship program? If you have an internship program, okay, what schools might have people you want? So when you get to the brewers, I feel like it is kind of not diverse, right? We lack a lot of diversity in just maybe as a brewer. But in the other areas where you are in a company, where can you add diversity there? Production, manufacturing, maybe the accounting teams, like outside just A and B. But then can you transfer people? Can you create a career path which keeps people interested and solely give them, responsibilities outside just what they do if you want to create that diverse pool? So thinking bigger picture and long term, I would encourage. Any comments, thoughts there, Ethan or John or Paul? You guys, there's only three of us, so we can.
No, there's more. There's more now.
Oh, okay.
I brought this up yesterday, but I'll bring it up again because it's not exactly the same people. But I resonate a lot with your point about, being diverse, about your thoughts on diversity, because there are certainly some overlooked groups.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I think, the big one, which is age. And I will say, at least anecdotally, that we have a pair of brand ambassadors who obviously haven't been very busy the last year, but I look forward to their return. They're both named Christine. They're both ladies in their 50s, and they're like so much fun, and they're not who you expect at the sampling table there at Wegmans or wherever else. They're not, forgive me, but to the stereotype of who you recruit for those jobs.
Yeah.
And they're so much more effective for that.
And they're reliable.
By being, so awesome and vivacious. And like Chris may, look like a 50-something-year-old lady, but she's got pictures of herself at Kiss concerts in the 70s with the whole makeup on, with Paul Stanley, right? Like, she's the real deal. She's a lot of fun. And, we got her through ECC's, brewing program thing. And she went into that not wanting to be a brewer. She went into that wanting to work on the sales or marketing side stuff, which is another point as well, right? I mean, recruiting for people who want to do the brewing work isn't the same as recruiting for people who want to do all the other jobs, and there's so many other jobs.
Yeah, I think it's to your point, like telling the story. What are the opportunities here, right? Don't just think so narrowly. People are like, oh, you're doing brew recruiting, so you only recruit for brewers. I'm like, no, there's so many other pieces to this puzzle where you can think outside the box and get creative. And if people don't know, they're thinking like, my friends are thinking like, oh, just brewer for a brewery, but people aren't thinking about how many other jobs there are out there. So, I think that's something to be keeping in mind.
So you talked about being proactive, actively going out and soliciting people, reaching out to them, cold calling them when they may not have thought about looking for a new job. How do you do that? What tools do you use to do that? Do you just talk to your friends? Do you have to build a network first? That sounds terribly complicated.
It's my favorite part of recruiting. And there's a few ways. I know in the beer industry, and actually put a list together and I can show it to you, but there's a lot of different websites that are very niche and they're for the industry. So, and most of those actually have places where you can post your job. But I think the biggest one is Brewbound, right? I think if you're recruiting for something, that is number one where you should go, because it seems like everyone in the industry is aware of it. But where are people looking? I think 9 times out of 10, they're on Indeed. And Indeed has done a very good job of getting their name out there. I think making it the go-to place for people to search. And then people, if they are searching for a job, can create alerts as a job gets posted, right? So you get a bigger return than if you just go to Brewbound. But Brewbound does email people too. So you can pay up for that to get it emailed to you, get it at the top. So if you're trying to do that, that is something I think is probably a wise investment, because you're going to be on the first page on Brewbound. But I would use Indeed. I also use LinkedIn a lot for the more higher level positions. I would use Indeed. I also have reached out and started relationships with a lot of the different universities that have a brewmaster program, or maybe even production, maybe manufacturing, depending on how large your shop is and where you're coming from. But, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the term Boolean Search. Talked to Megan earlier, she wasn't. But a Boolean Search is just a gift. If you can learn how to do a Boolean search, and they're called Boolean search strings, you can really make very targeted searches very easily. And you can do this, you can use this on LinkedIn, you can use it on Indeed, any job site where you can search a resume. Typically, you can use a Boolean search. You can also use it on like just a regular Google search, or even in your, Megan, I was telling her, in your email, when you can't think of something, you're trying to find something, this is great. Does anyone know what a Boolean search is, or have they used it before?
You can either unmute or put it in
John
chat.
has, Ethan has.
It's been a while, but yeah, and is it, can you spell that just to make sure I'm thinking of the right phrase?
Okay, it's Boolean, B-O-O-L-E-A-N.
Right, right. Because in my notes I had written Boolean as in buoyant cube. I'm like, no, wait, this is the B-O-O-L-E-A. Yeah,
Let
but
me
it's been a
share my
long
screen.
time, and I'm not as practiced in it, but that's good advice for searching those words and searching resumes.
Yes, so here's a Boolean search. I'm gonna make this really large, and we're gonna send this out. This is kind of like a cheat sheet, but a Boolean search, sorry. So it's like a mathematical equation. You can use the word and if you want to group two things together. So if you're looking for a brewer and hops, you would do brewer and hops. Or if you just want a brewer or hops, you can use these, and you can create these long strings. So this really helps as you want to develop a niche search. So can you guys see this screen?
Yes.
Is it too small? Okay,
No.
I'm gonna make it even bigger. So if you wanted to find a senior brewer and the words award winner, you would do senior brewer, and I'd put those in quotes because those are two words. Whenever you have more than one word and those have to be right next to each other, like a title, put them in quotes. But as you're searching, think about, okay, what are other titles that people might use or would put on their resume? So for example, senior brewer, SR period. If you wrote senior brewer, they're not going to pick up that. So you might want to put or, and when you have more than one thing being compared or grouped together, you put parentheses around it, kind of like the mathematical equation. And award winner up here. So if you wanted award winner and a senior brewer or a senior brewer, put that together. You can add things to this string with just the other word and, yeast, and recipe development. So this would bring anyone who has the word senior brewer or senior brewer, and each one of these would pull up on a resume. So you can really find what you want quickly.
Where are you putting that string, Stephanie?
It's a great idea. So let me pull up Indeed, for example, okay? Who here has used Indeed before to search? Has anyone? No. Okay, this is really friendly. If you're a company, I believe you can post your jobs for free, or you can pay to post them. I put about $100 in per job per month, just to give you guys a guideline. If you want to pay more, you can. It's where it goes up on the job site, the page when it's called the landing page. Pay per click is what it's called. Just so you know, you don't necessarily want to be on the first two pages. It gets very expensive, and anyone who comes across your resume, your job, is going to click, and it's going to cost you more money. So I think the second or third page is pretty good. So once you're in Indeed, I'd go to find candidates. So you can see here some of my previous jobs.
We can't see your.
Thank you very much for telling me.
Word document.
Okay, stop sharing. Got to share the different page. Okay. So sorry, this is Indeed for employers. You guys can see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a string I did earlier. A mechanical engineer, I needed that together, and I needed someone with these three things: automation, SolidWorks, and manufacturing. That was a must. But it's pretty basic. You can search by title, skills, companies, or field study. You'll notice though, as you add multiple terms, it automatically will do a generic search. So is someone here looking for a certain position they're looking to fill? If so, can you take yourself off mute? Anyone?
No one's hiring right now.
Not yet, but maybe in a few months.
All right, Jen, so what do you think you might hire for?
We're going to be, when we have another location opening in a few months, so we'll be hiring kind of a whole suite of jobs.
Give me one position you've had,
so
or maybe one position you guys have struggled to fill in the past.
My experience only speaks to the front house, so we'd be hiring more bartenders. That's not something that we've like struggled to fill, but that's just, that's my territory.
Okay.
So we could look for someone who is like a bartender with Cicerone, and which is like a certification, and we want someone who has experience at breweries.
Okay, so if I was going to be you, I'd put bartender, because sometimes they spell it differently. It's like one word or two, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'd put and brewer or brewery or brewing, because a lot of companies, their company is brewing, right? Or brewery. And okay, what else did we say?
Certification, Cicerone.
How do you spell that?
Cicerone.
That one?
Yeah.
And where are you located?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn? Okay, hopefully I'm not revealing any people who are on here. So now I would just do a search. And you have these people. It shows you their name, their background, and how long they've been there. Okay? Now it's 6 months. You can see it on this side. I typically go back to a week if you're trying to do something quickly. Okay? And then you can sort by most recent, and then you can go back 6 months. And the nice thing is here, you can add them to a project. Brooklyn bartender. Oh, create new. Oh, sorry. Add. And so if I went through these ones, you can pretty much quickly see where they worked and why. Like, so she was High Desert Brewing for 2 years there. Mini bar. Oh wait, she was then promoted to an alarm operator, so she stayed there for 2 years. But an ale house, a tap room. So that's another thing maybe we're thinking about. Maybe we should put tap room or brewery. And now do you guys kind of see how this works? So that's one thing I'd really recommend. If you want something specific, go after it. And then as you create a project, you can actually email this person. And it emails them. Once they accept, you get their contact information. And once someone accepts, I recommend getting it emailed to you immediately, because the biggest thing is once someone accepts it, they're interested. Call them within 5 minutes. That's going to be your greatest turnaround time, okay? Timing is everything. And if you talk to them and they sound good, I would say try to schedule the interview right then and there. And make sure, the biggest thing is follow up, okay? Send an email confirmation. Do it immediately. Even it's just, hey, confirming our interview for tomorrow at 5 o'clock, more details to follow. At least they have your name, your contact information. So if they don't get it, they can easily respond and say, hey, I didn't get it, because we all kind of forget it happened. So that's
Stephanie, it seems like you're creating a sense of urgency. Is that because you don't want good prospects to go cold or get disinterested?
All of the above, but I think people are getting other job offers right now. When you know, you seem wishy-washy, especially if they don't know about you, well, then they're going to feel wishy-washy about everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when I'm interviewing someone, I mean, it's also when the team has the most energy and the most interest and the most level of focus when you initially post a job, right? So, and when you start off, you're always going to cast a larger net, right? When you first start a job search, you're going to cast the widest net. And after a month, that's going to funnel down because you're going to see the same people. It's not a new search. So I think creating a sense of urgency is really important. It lets people know that you're interested, that you're not going to linger. And if you're liked by the team, they'll move, if that makes sense.
What about that kind of business philosophy, slow to hire, quick to fire? This seems like the antithesis of that.
You know, that's a good point. I think when you find the right candidate, you should know. When I'm looking at a resume, a big thing for me is tenure. All right. If someone's quick, like jumpy, I typically won't even give them a call because that to me is a very good indication that they're not going to last. And maybe that's why they have a jumpy resume. But I think if you do the proper screening, if you do a thorough interview, Tony Cordova is looking to get in. I wouldn't really stress about quick to hire, quick to fire. If you have a thorough interview process, it should be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say try to at least interview 2 to 3 people, maybe 5. I think more than that. If you have a good pool of candidates, you shouldn't need more. My goal, if I'm working on a job, just so you guys know, is to get 3 to 5 candidates. And 3 to 5 candidates typically within 2 to 3 weeks. I kind of think, why not? It's different if you are not going out and trying to search and you're only reviewing the people who are applying. Because yes, maybe you need more time to have good people apply. But if you can go out and engage, spend a couple hours doing this stuff, I think you'll get better turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So you talked about how you can make Indeed really work specifically for your exact needs. And you find some candidates, you reach out to them, you get them in the process, try to schedule the interview. Then what?
I think a big part, you know, as a third party person recruiting and representing a company, it kind of moves over to the company, right? It's kind of their responsibility from here to create the journey, the interview experience for a candidate. And I think some things, what I've seen work and fail with the company is, what does that interview process look like? Okay. Mm-hmm. How prepared are you? Are you on the phone and taking 5 other phone calls? Are you responding to emails during this interview process? Is someone there to greet them when they arrive? And I think I should back up a little bit.
Hey, Stephanie, why don't you stop sharing your screen then so you're larger as you're just talking now?
Uh-huh. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know it's so distracting. So I think the biggest thing is when you're doing that, starting with that interview confirmation in that email, let people know who they're meeting with. Give them the names and the titles. If you know, if it's going to be a, you know, one-on-one, give them a schedule, I would say. So people are prepared. It does help. And that also allows people to do their homework. These days, with so many resources, people do like to look on Indeed, LinkedIn, maybe on the website, and get an idea of who they're coming to meet with. So I think that's a really great starting point. Once you're doing that, then what's the experience like once they walk in the door? Is there someone there to meet them? Where are you meeting with them? What's the environment like? Making sure you're giving them their attention. And then in this process, depending what brewer you are, people might not know who you are. Or if you're trying to recruit for diversity and it's a position not really related to the skills of a brewer, and it can be, you know, anyone who has XYZ experience in manufacturing or accounting per se, you might need to sell them on the company. Really get excited about it. I'm not saying be fake in any way, but let them really know why you like the company and why you like working there and why you're passionate about it. get them excited as well. Let them know you're very selective in who you hire, right? So it's not because maybe they have one interview and you offer them the job. It's not because you don't have options. It's because you know what you want. You know, that's kind of the difference. I think it's important. You know, I have some clients who spend 20 minutes in an interview. To me, that's very off-putting to a candidate, right? You're not investing in the time. This is going to be a career for them. Even if you have no more questions to ask them, find something to do. Give them a tour. Walk them around, especially if you like them. If there's someone else you can talk to, even if it's not necessarily part of your formal interview, bring someone else in just to sit, chat, let them talk about company culture. Like, they might want to ask questions that they didn't feel comfortable asking you as the manager, right? So you want them walking away feeling good. And then if you do present the offer, and they accept, I think it's really important to have a very nice onboarding experience. Follow up with them, call them before they start, have a schedule for the first day. And then, you know, one thing we implemented at SRC was a mentorship program where one person was assigned to each new hire. And over the course of 3 months, they took them out to lunch 3 times. And they were kind of the point of contact. If they had questions that they didn't really want to ask their managers about or their bosses. So it just created also camaraderie, right? You get to know people. And that's what you're building is your culture. Because at the end of the day, if people love where they work, they're not going to leave.
How does all of that differ in the pandemic, where you might be interviewing somebody on Zoom, or they may not be coming to the office for at least a few more months, but they will have started their position remotely?
And this has happened across the board. This is the new norm. So speaking from some experience, then set up a follow-up call. Or if you're going to set up an interview schedule, still set up that interview schedule. Make sure the things are accurate. You might have the same person say, John, you set up the interview, but the person is speaking with Paul first. Maybe, John, you're on that call just to do an intro, a handoff, and you get off the phone. And then, you know, maybe it's going to be the same Zoom link. So then you come on and you kind of have a nice flow. So you don't leave them waiting. I would try to say, if you're going to do that, still do a back-to-back interview. You're going to have a schedule. One client of mine had like 5 meetings throughout the week. That was too much. Still keep it together, and then have the first person or the hiring manager come at the end and wrap up. Hey, do you have any questions? I know this is Zoom. What are you thinking? Or if you're in the office, I think it makes sense. Hey, walk around with the phone, and this is the production line. You can get a little creative here. Because if people can't see what the environment's going to be like, I think it's hard. And I've had a client walk around with their phone and say, hey, I want to show it to you. Say hello, say hello. And that, it creates something.
Yeah, connecting. What challenges do you see of recruiting in this industry?
You know, I think there's just not a lot. You know, I find that you have people very young in the industry without a ton of experience. Maybe people don't have the proper background or educational background that you might need. And then, as you guys probably see this, anyone thinks they're qualified to brew beer. If you post the job, you get all these applicants who are not really qualified. So I think it is sourcing good candidates, and because it's a pretty young industry, yes, you have the more senior established breweries out there, but there's not a ton, right? And their people kind of stick. So I just think you got to get creative as how you find people. And maybe if it's specific to the beer industry, creating the feeder programs, the internships, working with the universities, and building a strong referral pool.
And then specifically about diversity in this industry, you talked about being diverse in your definition of diversity. Where do we go from here as an industry? There's been a lot of talk about diversity and inclusivity for, you know, the last maybe year and a half. It's really ramped up, and the industry as a whole recognizes that there's a need and an opportunity, right, to be more diverse. How do you do that? Like, how do you do that using Indeed or LinkedIn? Or what other strategies are there for
I mean,
actively recruiting?
It's interesting, even with like LinkedIn, if you're going to go do it, there are pictures, right? You can see people, you can get a sense of who they are. You can do keyword searches. You can still do that. I mean, that's the nice thing about LinkedIn. You're just searching, right? And so if you're finding people, that helps a little bit. But I think partnering with different associations, okay, that are focused on diversity, maybe even doing local presentations to them. You know, if you're not looking to relocate someone and you're a smaller organization, go out into your community, start spreading the word, reach out, maybe do presentations, maybe do a beer tasting one night when people have their meetings. You know, let them know that you're hiring. Let people know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beer industry, they're very big on community, right? Or invite people in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do private tours. Maybe do a beer tasting with the brew, you know, with a few different diverse organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and start networking that way. Like, don't do what everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're a larger organization, you know, there's this other idea of putting two in the pot, if you will. If you want a diverse selection of candidates, if you only have one person who's diverse and everyone else is not, that candidate actually has a disadvantage. Okay, so you want at least 2 to 3 people of diverse backgrounds if you're trying to, you know, kind of be fair to that. The idea is like kind of at least two of a diverse background. And therefore, I don't know, the psychology behind it is the group think. That if you only put one person in, they're less likely to get the job. If you were to put 2, that percentage increases significantly.
Okay.
Anyone else here have any ideas for diversity? I think it is interesting, especially in this industry. Have you guys found anything that's working, that's helped?
Or that you've heard about and wanted to try?
I wouldn't say it really worked, but when we did our first initial round of hiring, we did canvass the neighborhood and meet a whole bunch, you know, within a 3 or 4 block radius, because we were very much hoping to hire, you know, somebody from the neighborhood. We didn't think that they were going to be a brewer. In fact, you know, they're probably going to be a porter, or, you know, but that's a place you can start. It's a job. It's a job we needed. So, but I don't think we got any real responses from that, or at least none that we knew were from that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking to a company yesterday, as a matter of fact, and they were asking me, and I said, well, you should really attend the session because I'm just going to take a guess here. And my guess was, so they wanted to hire more. Their location was in a Latino population, but they weren't getting any Latino applicants. And I said, well, have you partnered with a local organization, just as you've suggested? But my big thing was, is anyone on their leadership, their executive team, on the board of any of the organizations that serve the Latino population? And none of them are on any local community boards. And I thought, well, there's an opportunity to get to form a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, the other one might be community colleges, right?
Mm-hmm.
Typically, those people might be more diverse than, you know, a private college it's paying $60,000 to go to. And those people are always looking for partnerships with businesses. They have career fairs. I'd go to them. Just get your name out there. Because people don't know. People are not thinking brewery when they're graduating, even if it's with an associate's, okay? And I think the stress is for candidates, they don't know how they would fit in. So they're not going to apply. They're going to narrow vision. So if you can create those open lines of communication. The other thing is maybe even your local unemployment department. They, you know, if you go on unemployment, especially now, to collect unemployment, you have got to check in with these companies. They have to be able to review your resume. They typically, you have to show where you're applying. So if you reach out to them, they also have a place where you can post jobs. They often have career fairs, not during COVID, maybe online, but try to take advantage of those things. I think though, it could be fun. yeah, okay, not during COVID, but throwing an event, inviting people in, you know, maybe doing it for free, right? I think that's kind of the avenue. People come for free food and beer. If you're in college, you know this 101. That's how you get people to come to anything, free food. So if you can promote that, maybe because it's going to be a free event, it's a community event, your radio stations might even advertisement. You can let the newspaper know it's a free thing, trying to get the community involved. And when it's free and it's focusing on the community, I think there's a lot of the news, people are willing to talk about it without having to pay for it.
Ethan, with your efforts of canvassing in a certain radius in the neighborhood of your brewery, do you think if you had, instead of inviting them to apply for a position, invited them to come to your brewery and taste some beer and learn about the career opportunities, do you think that may have possibly yielded different results?
Yeah, probably. And I'm sure that there are, I don't remember exactly how we worded the ad, but I can imagine, knowing what I know now, that, you know, we may not have worded it in a way that seemed as inclusionary as we meant for it to be. I know that we did do it bilingual, that the announcement was bilingual, so Spanish and English. Of course, there's more languages than that being spoken on the west side of Buffalo, but we only had so many resources in terms of translation. Spanish being relatively easy to find somebody who knows. Karen, not so much. And I don't mean Karen, I mean Karen, the tribe from. So, you know, I can imagine that we could be more successful. We will be reopening the tap room soon. We will be doing another round of hiring for front and back of house soon. So I would like to take some of what I've learned and parlay that, and we'll see if we're more successful because we word things in a way that's more inviting or less exclusionary.
Right.
And I would, Ethan, that's an interesting thing if you're actually going and canvassing. I would take it the next step further. You know, people like getting to know people. If they know who's on the other side of the door, they're more likely to walk in, right? If you actually were to knock on the door and say, hey, we wanted to invite you. Just wanted to make sure you're aware of us. We're trying to do a community event. If you have the time or someone who's willing to do it, it's an option. Or calling people on the phone. If you find the resume, instead of just emailing them to the same thing, call them. Yeah. You're not a spammer, right? Like people are so surprised when I'm not a spam call. They're like, oh, you said hello, you know, and people like it. It's refreshing. It's not normal. And if you're going to call someone, leave a message, but let them know you're excited to call them. I think calling people has gone to the curb. I think it's something that should not be thrown aside because I get a huge response because I'm calling, I'm leaving a good message, and I'm at least referencing why I'm calling it. So they know that I've actually looked and I know what I'm talking about.
This company that I mentioned earlier who wanted to recruit from their local Latino community, the head of the company, he was very sad. He was very kind of down, like, look at us. We're all middle-aged white people, you know, and he said, we have completely failed. We can't, and he said, we can't do it. We can't recruit for diversity. And I said, just because you haven't doesn't mean you can't, right? Like you have to do things differently. And we just had a dialogue about it. And so what about that, right? Like there are a lot of companies, you know, I'm hearing a little bit of frustration from Ethan and, you know, from your efforts last time and on the call to get ideas maybe for next time. But like, what about that, right? Like when companies feel like, you know we need diversity and we know it would be helpful and good for our business, but we just don't really, you know, we haven't been able to do it.
If I can, I mean, I think that a lot of what was being talked about in this session, but as well in others that addressed hiring and you know the intersection of that with diversity and inclusion. You know, if you put a set of procedures in place that, you know, reduce bias and increase who sees your ads and who feels seen in your ads and that kind of stuff, you put all those procedures and policies in place and then you let it run. And you're going to get what you get. You know, the idea isn't say like, well, we need to have this many Black people and this many women and this many Asian people in our tap room when we're done. If you put policies and procedures in place that lead to diversity, you'll get what diversity is to be had out there. I think if you're Chris Erickson and you're operating in Lake Placid, you can do that all day, but there are not certain minorities around to respond to the ads. They're just not there. So I wouldn't feel helpless or I wouldn't feel put out if I was Chris. And I did all these things. And then I looked around a year later and I'm like, my staff looks more or less the same. I'm like, well, you've looked around Lake Placid, right? I mean, you work with what you got.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a different story for us on the west side of Buffalo where it's obviously diverse. And I think, you know, I think we could put those policies and procedures in place and then a year later look around. And if it doesn't look more like what we were hoping for, then I think we would have cause to say, maybe we're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing is, when you're doing that, like even with the jobs, like, do you really need a degree? And I'm probably not even thinking, maybe I don't need the degree for this, because who's getting the degree? Subconsciously, you're creating a bias. Or when you're talking to people, we might be a little bit more judgmental because we didn't come from that background. So their story is not the story we expected or used to hearing when they're saying maybe why they switched jobs or why they might have had a jumpy start initially. You know, if someone had, you know, bad tenure, but then the last 2-3 years is good, I still want to talk to them because it seems like maybe they turned the corner. So just those small things is, you know, I think as Dr. J probably talked about yesterday, it was, what is that job description? What is it actually saying? What's the tone? Who is it reaching out to? But, you know, to your point, at the end of the day, you got to hire the best candidate and do what you can to get as diverse of a pool as possible. Unfortunately, it's not always going to be there. But I'm not trying to put a plug in, but recruiting does take a lot of time, right? And if you really want that and you have the means, it might be advantageous to, not me, anyone, if you can reach out to a firm. I don't do temp to hires, but maybe a temp to hire in this case might allow you and both parties to try it before you both commit. And that might create a larger pool of candidates. And that could then create a feeder, right? Maybe it's the lower level where you get the diversity. Start with the easier things to fill where maybe there's going to be more diversity. But screen them well, find people with potential, and let them know their career path. Let them know you believe in them. Give them a chance that other people have not. And that might be the funnel. That might be the solution. Don't, you know, as brewers, right? It's pretty non-diverse. So don't start there because you're going to beat yourself up. But start from low and go higher. And maybe year by year on the plant floor, we're going to have 10 diverse out of the 50. Whatever it is, push yourself. Go out and search for these resumes. You can look for keywords. You can look for African American on a resume. People are part of groups. You know, that's a way to get, you know, Asian or Mexico or Spanish. You want someone who's fluent in Spanish. That's a way of doing it. And you're not selecting them because of that. You're still interviewing them with the same pool. So I think that is fair.
Mm-hmm.
But the keyword search is where this all comes in. And, you know, I just wanted to show you one more thing, if you don't mind. Sharing my screen. If you guys use LinkedIn, you can do the same thing here. If you just go to your LinkedIn page, I hope you all have one, because you can connect, but you can do a Boolean search here. I'm actually going to just cut and paste this one. So this doesn't mean they're looking, but here's some people who came right up, and funny enough, in Brooklyn, New York. But you can go to all filters here, and you can do locations. So if you wanted Bureau. Show results. Here you have 21 results. And now you can message them. And I want to show you something. I don't know if you guys know Daniel. I don't. He's the third. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is important. You can message them. Oh, because he's my third. It brings me to this, so I can't. When you see these 3 dots, if you cannot directly message someone, go to here, click connect. Always add a note. And I actually do the same one typically if I'm working on a job, like a bartender. I'd say, hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm looking for a bartender. Your background caught my attention. You only have 300 characters, but you personalized it. You pointed out why. And if they accept, then you can continue the conversation. But this is the trick. If you're first and second people, you can always send a message to, okay? Always send a message. Don't just send an invite. It's going to get ignored. But if you find someone you like and you see message, that means you have to pay to message them, unless you go to the 3 dots and click connect. That is a huge, huge point that has definitely changed a lot of searches for me. So, and just remember, you can do the same Boolean search here. So if you do a search string that works, I would email it to yourself and save it for later, and you can continue to massage it.
John, did you take all those screenshots?
Hey, Ryan Bedford, he's a good dude.
I was like pretty sure I was going to see a familiar name in there, but
I wasn't, but there you go. He's a good guy. He was at the Double Windsor for a long time.
See? And this is the other thing, guys. Use LinkedIn for this. Reach out to people. Say, hey, you know, right now, people have been changing their staff, or people are moving out of New York City and upstate. So let people know you're looking. And this is a great way to do it. And you can send them the link right in there that you're posting. So have I bored you, or has this been okay?
I think it's fascinating. I didn't know a lot of, I mean, I don't hire generally, but I didn't know a lot of those strategies like LinkedIn and the Boolean and.
Yeah, they are a game changer. And thing is, take some time when you can actually focus. And I create lists, like what I write down a brewer. What are the different titles? Shift brewer, head brewer, brewmaster, master brewer, 1-word brewmaster, 2 words. So go through that and keep massaging it, you know, as you're searching, and you'll find a lot. And the more you do it, the easier it is. I did send Megan all these different presentations. I have, well, the Boolean search string. She can email it to you, or I can email it to you directly.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guide there. There's some YouTube videos just to look at it. And then the resume search on LinkedIn, that's there, and the different websites you can use. So if there's anything else, you know, please call me, let me know. If you are trying to do a Boolean search and you're not really getting it, call me. I'll walk you through it. I can share a screenshot. It doesn't take much time. And kind of go from there.
I just posted the link.
Yeah.
In the chat for the.
Oh, good.
Your contact information is also in the chat, Stephanie.
Okay, so if you guys have my email is recruiting. I actually just do my first name, stephanie.vavonese@brewrecruit.com.
Okay, now you're confusing them. It's just in chat. It's recruiting@smbrecruiting.com.
Well, the ones on the paper, I put Brew Recruit for the Brew Recruit side of things.
I assume they all go to.
They all go to the same place.
They do, yeah. It's all,
trying to be
there's only one
consistent.
Stephanie Vavonese. I will also be taking these PDF guides that Stephanie created, and I'll merge them into a blog post that will go on the NYSBA website. And then we always, whenever we post a blog, we promote it in the Facebook group too. If you're not on our Facebook group, which is for breweries only, please join that. It is a wealth of information for you, and an opportunity to connect with fellow brewery representatives in New York State. We have one more minute here, and then we have to sign off with Stephanie. Any other thoughts or questions? Is anyone maybe a little overwhelmed with all these details and strategies, or excited to do their next hire because you have new tips and resources at your fingertips?
I think one of the things that I've also gotten out of this workshop and a few others, or this presentation and a few others, is that, prior results do not predict future performance. You might see lawyers say that on their ambulance chasing commercials. You don't have a lot of other data to go on, to be fair, when it comes to, resume or background. But for a lot of jobs, a whole lot of prior experience isn't necessarily crucial. And I think that's a really good opportunity to find somebody who's not. I'm thinking about the front and back house in particular. I mean, you can teach people what they need to know about beer or about the food, but it's really hard to teach people to be good and nice and come in with a good attitude. And a lot of times front of house is acting, right? You have to be in a good mood no matter how you really feel about your day or about that customer or whatever. So I restaurant workers in particular, sometimes experience is a liability, honestly, because you get very cynical after a while. You get very jaded. You might get very good at figuring out how to rip off your employer in ways they hadn't thought of yet. So yeah, restaurant workers, right? Cash businesses with alcohol, generally difficult. So yeah, so like I like the idea of looking for people without necessarily that background, but with background that you really do want.
Yeah, to your
I had a mentor
being a
once
good employee.
I had a mentor who didn't hire based on experience. They hired based on kind of really three things. One is if they thought the person was smart. Two, if they thought that person was passionate and motivated. And three, if they thought that person had a good moral compass. That was really it. Those three things. Like if this person's smart, they can learn the job. If they're motivated, they'll be successful at it. Obviously they wanted people on their team who had strong ethics and, not gonna skim off the top, right?
I mean, that's one thing I do stress all the time. You can teach skills, you cannot teach personality. If you like the personality, hire them. If they're smart, you can train them. You need reliable people. One bad apple really does sour the whole bunch. So don't hire someone if you don't get a good vibe. I really would say that, because it really sets the tone back. It sets the team back. If someone doesn't know it, they can learn it if they're smart. And the other thing is, to that extent, is people are looking to switch careers too more and more, right? So if they have a good track record, move them over if they want to take a chance. And Ethan, to your point, I haven't had the same experience you had in the restaurant business, but if someone's been a waitress or worked in the service industry, I like that. They know how to relate with people. They can work well under stress. They're multitasking, and they typically have a decent work ethic. So it's funny. Those are the people I do search for often, especially in a sales job. So I think they're pretty adaptable, but I really appreciate everyone's time today. If there's anything else I can do, call me, let me know. That's my cell phone. You can text me. Happy to help. And I really appreciate the time tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your time. We really appreciate you being here, Stephanie.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you much.
All right,
have a great one. Take
care. Next session is at 5:30, malt handling with Jeff Hughes from Country Malt. Thanks for that gesture there, Ethan.
Handling, yes, in my mind.
Handling malt.
So if you can, catch that session in a half hour.
All right,
everybody. See you online.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.